Well, I want to talk with you a bit today about your mortality, about the fact that you're going to die, and that you know that you're going to die, that you have this awareness, and how you manage that awareness in your everyday life. I find in working with patients in a variety of settings that our troubles often reveal the ways in which we manage our acceptance or our denial of our mortality, of our inevitable death. Let me tell you a bit about Suzanne. Suzanne came to me for psychotherapy about 3 years after completing a very arduous course of chemotherapy for a very aggressive breast cancer. She'd been through a couple of regimens, things hadn't worked. They finally came to a certain protocol that was used at that time that seemed to just wipe out the cancer. And so she did very well, and actually did so well that she became somewhat of an inspiration to others. She volunteered at our Cancer Institute. She worked with families, with patients, with clinicians, and was a role model for people in the community. And I was meeting with Suzanne in my office once a week, talking about a variety of topics. And after we'd been meeting for a few months, she came in one day with a pain right here in her liver. And soon we knew that the cancer had come back and was pretty much everywhere. Given the fact that she'd been through this dramatic, aggressive course of chemotherapy in the past, at that point, really, the options were very limited and her prognosis very poor. And Suzanne said something to me that's unusual. I work a lot with cancer patients, and people have relapses and have to deal with that. It's very challenging. But Suzanne said something really striking to me that I don't think I'll ever forget. She said, "Why should you continue to see me when you have other patients to help? Patients who are going to live." Suzanne, in a sense, this was a preemptive strike. She had this idea that the fact that she was going to die meant that she didn't deserve help anymore. She was concerned that I would be disappointed with her failure to stay in remission. So she would gracefully bow out rather than risk being ejected. Ejected for breaking the code, the pact at the heart of medical care, the pact that says the patient never dies. Well, she may have had this impression that she was the only patient of mine that was going to die. But in fact, all of my patients are going to die. All of us are going to die. This cannot make us less worthy. With mortality in view, in fact, for many people, there are new opportunities. But this is not how Suzanne experienced it. No, she had caught the zeitgeist. She had caught the idea, so prevalent in medicine, that the patients who do well, the patients who do not die, are heroes. And the patients who do poorly are ashamed. Her cancer survivor identity had somehow become the core of her being, the only source of value that she thought she had to offer to others. This was her calling, her self-esteem, her sense of purpose. She feared that her failure to win the fight with cancer was a breach of the contract, grounds for dismissal. This felt true to her. Of course, it was not the case. But I reflected on this. How could this be the case? How could she be so convinced that she was going to not get care anymore just because she was going to die? And as I reflected on it more and more, I started to recognize how much of our lives are determined, steered, directed by our anxiety, our fear of dying. More than you think. We are aware of our mortality. We are the products of millions of years of evolution. We have this very strong survival instinct. The engine of evolution, of course, is that survival instinct. That's what makes progress possible. And it is so deeply inbred, so deeply embedded in our DNA. But at some point, our survival instinct has this confrontation with the much more recently arrived notion that we are mortal. We become aware of this, and we realize that survival, ultimately, is impossible. All of us are going to die. This terrifies us and motivates us. Now, medicine knows all too well that, as Hippocrates said, ars longa vita brevis, the work is long and life is short. The work goes on forever, but we are here but for a moment. With all of the technological advances that we've been looking at over the last few days, that you all are exposed to in your everyday lives, still we have not changed the undeniable fact that all of us are going to die. This terrifies us and motivates us. We move forward, and we come to this realization, as Ernest Becker wrote back in 1973, the idea of death, the fear of it, haunts the human animal like nothing else. It is a mainspring of human activity. And Becker goes on to argue that we must find a way to blind ourselves to this terror of our mortality. If you look death in the face, you risk enormous despair or madness. So you have to find a way to look away, to ignore your mortality. But there's a hazard there as well, because so much of what we do is valuable, is important, is powerful because of our boundedness, the fact that we are here but for a limited amount of time. So to ignore mortality puts our projects, our purposes, the meaning of our lives in jeopardy. Now, how does this come about? Well, starting around the age of 7, you start to be aware of the fact that people die. You experience a loss. Someone dies in your family, maybe a neighbor or a friend or a pet that dies. Or there's just that child's simple observation that the worm you stepped on isn't moving anymore and won't be making it to the other edge of the sidewalk. These experiences accumulate, educate, and frighten us. How can we find safety? Well, with luck, our elders, role models, parents, others, they'll teach us the rules for staying safe. You know, do your share, earn praise and appreciation, work with others. We learn, of course, from our peers as well. Run faster, jump higher, be cool, do your work, be nice, get good grades. As we grow into adulthood, the underlying goals remain the same, but our strategies evolve. We learn new ways of keeping score. Make your mark. Do you have the funds, the friends, the look to stay safe, to be connected, to know the world is there for you? We devote our creative, productive, earnest energies into the things that matter the most and hope that this is somehow keeping us safe, just as we found safety in attachment to our parents when we were afraid, when we were little children. Think for a moment with me about Michael. Michael is a very highly trained professional, very, very capable. People seek him out for his services and his assistance. He loves the challenges of his work, the rewards he receives every day for it. Michael came to me because his wife was worried about him. He left the house early every morning and came home very late. He wasn't eating right, he's not really getting much sleep, and Michael's wife is worried that he's going to die, or their marriage is going to die, or both. How does Michael keep mortality at bay? Well, all of us produce and destroy. This is how our lives go. We produce, we contribute, we work, we help others, we raise families, we participate, we maintain our self-esteem, we maintain our membership in society through our productive activities. But we also destroy. We destroy by overlooking our loved ones, by seeking status over intimacy. Our need to belong to the larger community, our need to participate, can sometimes overwhelm our deeper needs. In reflecting on Suzanne and Michael, I have to ask myself, how do I maintain my self-esteem? And are there ways that I maintain my self-esteem but somehow neglect my higher purposes? Do my commitments, my accomplishments, put my deeper values at risk? I juggle the demands of family, friends, work, patients, and I age. I notice each morning that I'm not 23 anymore. My parents have both died. I see my father's face in the mirror. I hear my mother's inflection in my voice. They're both gone. But maybe they showed me a path. They taught me those rules to keep safe, to stay connected. I have to ask, are they working for me? So, let me tell you one more story about Marla. Marla is an actress. Well, she wants to be an actress. She's looking for acting jobs, but you know how that goes. It's hard to find work. So she's unemployed. It's not a big problem because her parents are very wealthy and they're happy to support her. There's really no pressure. So Marla is attractive, talented, bright, lovable, and lost. Yes, Marla and her parents have an unconscious agreement, an unstated fact of their relationship. They agree there's no need for Marla to grow up. There's no need for her to take on adult responsibilities. It's okay, and she doesn't need to learn how to cope without her parents. So they have an unconscious strategy to deal with death anxiety, right? Marla need never grow up. Her parents will never die and leave her. That's the deal. They'll never lose one another. But of course, this strategy is doomed to failure. Marla, at some point, is going to have to learn to live without her parents because they are going to die, and she is going to grow old and have to take on those adult responsibilities. But this agreement, this unconscious pact they have, keeps Marla from growing up. So Michael is a wonderful, skilled professional, but perhaps at the cost of his inner life, his intimacy, his long-term security. Suzanne's heroism left her other needs behind, as if she had nothing to offer other than her courage. But we all have so much more to offer. Death looms somewhere in the distance. And that distance is unknowable, and beyond our control. It reorders our priorities. It pushes us, hopefully, it pushes us to ask, what am I doing with my time? To what end? What blind spots do I have? What am I overlooking? What am I not seeing because of this fear that drives me ever forward and leads me to lose track of other things? We each take on roles, and at some point the role feels like this is what I must do. Where does the must come from? Perhaps the must is an illusion created to distract me from my fears. Look around you. Your life is built around avoiding the simple, inevitable truth that you are going to die. Marla is beautiful, Michael, talented. Suzanne has a risky new identity that isn't working out too well. Each of them, though, has gifts and opportunities. Gifts and opportunities to support their self-esteem, to establish and maintain their place in society. So this is how it works. We manage the terror of death with a sense of belonging and purpose. But wanting to belong, wanting desperately to belong, can lead to perfectionism, overwork, and unrealistic expectations. We have these desperate attempts to bolster our self-esteem, but it doesn't fully repair the lost survivor status, the fading beauty, the people at home who barely know us. Our relationships, our culture, our worldview is supposed to protect us, to keep us safe from the terrifying truth that our time is limited. Marla, Michael, and Suzanne, they're in trouble. They're in trouble. People are worried about them. The denial of death distracts them from their life's purpose, from their creativity, from meaningful life. Well, I want to point out, this isn't all such a downer. I mean, we really have to pay attention to the fact that society thrives because our species has found a way to cope with the awareness of our finitude, right? We are driven to build, to grow, to plan, to survive, to collaborate, to be creative, to be masters of our environment, science, technology, the arts. We need people who want to collaborate, who want to work together, who want to build. We need people who want to ease suffering, who want to create things of beauty. But fear can push us to do better things, but also to narrow our perspective, blinding us to our biases and our fears. Anxiety leads to great things. You have to ask yourself, how driven are you in your pursuits? What are the costs of your dedication? Does your intense, life-affirming professional pursuit leave some part of you in need of resuscitation? Does the fear of losing, failure, rejection give you tunnel vision? We have to ask ourselves, how and where shall we spend our time, our energy? We must be calculating the sacrifices we make in family, in work, in spirit. How can you hold on to the grounded you and the transcendent you, the powerful you and the human, mortal you? This is the challenge of being human. This is the challenge of having that survival instinct and yet that awareness that it can't go on forever. There are many ways to establish and maintain meaning and purpose in our lives. Our fears and failures, well, our fears of failure blind us. Blind us to manageable strategies that don't require perpetual childhood, unending beauty, work to the neglect of our families, or very important conversations left incomplete. Let's look in the mirror together. Ars longa, vita brevis. The work is infinite, and we are not. We must take risks, build, succeed, and stay true to our values, our highest selves. We must find ways to be mindful of our mortality, to be aware of our fears. And may all of us find ways for that awareness to grow. Thank you very much.